What's up, everybody? Just wanted to make an update video on the Miata project, given that we finally got it out to Indiana. Everything went with the trip, went smoothly, and everything was good in that regard. We did go ahead and start wrenching on it while I had my buddy Donnie and my dad and a couple work buddies out here yesterday. Didn't film a whole lot just because we were just kind of cranking on it, and we're just kind of having a good time wrenching. So I do have some time lapse footage I'll fit in here to the video somewhere along the lines where I'm just chatting, where we were kind of removing some of the stuff off the long block. But yeah, so here's the car. It's a 95 1.8 car. It's the Montego blue. Car had been resprayed sometime in its life, but it's still in pretty good shape. Paint's pretty clean. Before we went out or brought it to Indiana, my dad went ahead and buffed a lot of it, which cleaned the paint up quite a bit from where it was. And it's not a show car by any means, but it's a pretty good 10-foot car, if you want to call it that. It does have a racing style fiberglass hardtop that's obviously not painted. These were the seats that were in it, the Sparco Sprints. I'm going to be selling these. I'm a little bit too big for these seats, so I'm going to be selling these and then getting probably Corbeau FX1s, driver's side to start, and then maybe the passenger side too, depending on how a stock seat may or may not work out. It also came with this set of wheels, which are Avanti Storms with brand new Toyo R888s. Those are going to be for sale. Not that I don't want to run them, I just could use the money, and the car obviously already has a set of the 6ULs with some good tires on them, so that's that. Inside of the car, like I mentioned, is completely gutted. Obviously needs to be gone through and cleaned up and repainted, and that's definitely on the docket to do. You see, I do have that stock seat I showed in a previous video. Unsure if that's going to end up getting used due to clearance with the roll bar. From a safety perspective, it's rather unsafe to do this because your head runs the risk of hitting the bar in like a rear impact collision and what have you. So we'll see if that ends up getting used or not, but for now it's just sitting in there. So game plan on the interior is pretty much to get all of the floor pretty much all the way down the whole console, all the way up to right about here where the windshield line meets. All that's going to get painted or bed lined or undercoated. I haven't exactly decided that yet. I like the idea of doing like a bed liner because it's just more durable and it has a harder finish. Undercoat seems like a good alternative as well, but that does stay a little more rubbery, which I'm just concerned about how that might pick up dirt and stuff. The roll bar itself will likely be repainted. Not sure color yet, if maybe it'll stay white. Might just paint it like gloss black or something. And then the crash bar itself, what I'm going to do is take that out, sand it down, and paint that as well. Probably the same color as the roll bar. The Mega Squirt, which has this super sweet like microfiber towel and zip tie mount, might I say, is pretty strong. That's going to be, just mounted with like a sheet metal or a sheet aluminum bracket I'll make. I'm going to make a sheet aluminum panel for where the tombstone would normally go to mount all the window switches, headlight switches, as well as like the wideband gauge and stuff like that. It's already got like a nice shift knob on it. I've got a shifter rebuild kit. It's already got the nice steering wheel and everything like that. And then all the OEM harness stuff back there, which I have to go through post-fire. Some of the stuff got messed up, but nothing too bad. And I'm going to be going through that and wrapping all of the harness, everything in here with Tessa tape and cleaning it all up after that crash bar has been painted and put back in. Door panels, not sure. I'll probably just leave them like, bare for now. I may end up getting some of those like racing style door panels that are just like the sheet of aluminum, or maybe if I can find a set used or something, I'll grab them. But that's that. It does have a Blackbird Fabworks rear wing, which is pretty cool and aggressive looking. It has a pretty gnarly angle of attack, which is obviously adjustable with the rear supports. That needs it's pretty well sorted, but I do need to go through and add some washers to the fasteners and seal the holes up well, just from a rain perspective. What else? It's got like a Bill Stein strut and kind of like custom spring combo, pretty popular setup amongst the Mazda track guys. As I mentioned, these are the 949 6UL wheels, and the current tires on here are BF Goodrich Rival 2s, I believe they're called. And then the almighty engine bay. So you can see it's got a Mishimoto radiator in it with 2 nice fans. You can see we got a big old hole where all the normal intercooler bits would be. And then we've got the engine itself down here with pretty much both sides of it taken off. So basically what we did was, as a part of the fire, one of the big things that failed, you'll have to excuse the pile of junk, we were just mad dashing yesterday, was the oil feed line. This is what went into the top of the turbo, and you can see by the overall thickness that basically the rubber inside of this line melted, or the Teflon or whatever it is inside of this dash 4 line melted. So this needed to be replaced. You can kind of see the core in there. But on this particular car, the oil feed for that is way down there. You can kind of see where it's wet, like right above my finger. That's where the oil feed is. That's where the stock oil pressure sensor goes. And it's an absolute bear to get to when the intake manifold was on. So we just went ahead and said screw it. We took off the intake manifold and pulled it all out. Not too upset about that, as the stock manifold gasket was, it had seen better days. So the intake manifold's off, just chilling. While we have this out, we're going to be cleaning up the injectors and putting some new seals on all the injectors while we're out, just to make sure those guys are sealing up well. Another thing we're going to be doing is going through and any of these, vacuum solenoids and stuff, like that one down there, up here, the one that's on the manifold, EGR system, anything and everything that can be deleted will get deleted. So just trying to simplify the engine bay, similar to what I did on the Audi. You can see some of the wiring here is just like bare. That was mostly I pulled off some of the nasty wire loom that had got hot, just to verify that these wires are okay. They're all good. Same thing with this wiring loom here. You can kind of see I have it wrapped in that nice engine bay Tesa tape that I used on the Audi as well. I cut off a big section of loom here just to make sure it was good. Couple things that did get damaged. Pretty much the whole harness for the injectors, coil packs, and all that. None of that was actually damaged from like a wiring perspective, but all of the plugs were melted or deformed in some way. I think I kept that. Yeah, it's down here. So like you can see, like the wiring was still intact, but all the plugs got all melted and mangled up, and you can just kind of see it got crispy. So fortunately with the Miata, this is all one piece, and essentially this was everything that was damaged engine wise or wiring wise on the car, except for the cam position sensor, which I've already rewired and also Tesa taped on the kind of local side of that harness. We already have a replacement one up there. Just grabbed that off eBay for like 35 bucks to replace that. Other notable things: the speedometer cable, some of the rubber on it got burnt, and then the car sat, so the cable rusted, so that got locked up. Not a big deal for me because of my future plans for the car, so I just cut that out. Throttle cable had the same thing happen, so we have another one of those used from eBay as well. Dipstick handle melted, so we replaced that. I was talking about, again, the oil feed line got pretty messed up. To kind of improve that system, we're going to go with one of these advanced auto sport oil relocation kits. As I was talking about it, given that port is really hard to get to, what that does is it allows you to put a line into there, and it gives you a nice aluminum block that you mount to your firewall that line feeds into, and then it gives you a nice central place that's easy to access for all your oil pressure related things. So the turbo feed line can go from there, as well as if I wanted to add an aftermarket oil pressure gauge or oil pressure sensor, that can go in there, and it just makes it really easy to get to. The wideband oxygen sensor was also damaged. Not so much the oxygen sensor, but the Innovate controller that was in there before got damaged. So I went ahead and switched to the AEM, traditional AEM kit, and then I've just got a new Bosch 17025 to put on that. The kit had a lot of these couplers. This was the one that went into the turbo inlet, and given that that was kind of the source of the fire, you can see it got really hot, and it actually started to kind of crack in a couple spots. So we just cut this guy off, and I'll be replacing this. I'm actually probably going to be replacing most of the silicon. You can see it's just stuff that was kind of thrown together by not Donnie. That wasn't Donnie's doing. That was the kit he bought, so he just ran with it. The intercooler piping has all blue couplers with, doesn't appear to be stainless clamps, as most of them are rusty. Sorry about that. But yeah, you can see the intercooler here kind of has some, I'm actually kind of impressed. It's pretty creative shade tree engineering, as I'd call it. Basically what we've got is some metal strapping wrapped around both sides. It's one piece, goes all the way around, bolts back to itself to crimp it. We've got some like fire hose looking stuff to, I suppose, keep it from rubbing on the core. And then we've just got a carriage bolt hanging out in the top that would go up, and then that was the two mounting points kind of just hung off the core support. But the radiator, or the intercooler, has definitely seen better days. I'm probably going to smoke check it just to make sure it's still good, it doesn't have any leaks or anything. But it is a nice gritty core, at least. So it's a solid intercooler. Needs to obviously be cleaned up, and we're gonna work on a better mount for it. It's got some type of China blow-off valve on it, but gonna be replacing, like I said, all the couplers, all the T-bolts, and then just reusing the piping, redoing the intercooler mounts after I smoke check it, and then we should be pretty good there. Fitment was, acceptable. So turbo side, the only reason we took that off was because we did go ahead and remove all the power steering nonsense. We did definitely identify that was the source of the last fire in this car. Not going to be able to really see it now, but basically what had happened was on the pump, on the high pressure line, whether it was the line that failed or the pump that failed, it was just pushing fluid out of the top of the high pressure line. So I'm just going to remove it for now. I kept all the lines, and I kept the high pressure lines over there, low pressure line, and the little cooler thing are over there. And we're going to probably just loop the cooler or the rack for the moment while it's kind of just here moving around. I think there's a pretty strong chance it's just going to go to manual steering, and I'll modify the rack, as most of the online tutorials will tell you how to make it a manual rack, cutting that seal out of the middle. Most of the turbo coming off just gave us better access to get all these brackets and shit off of here. You can see there's a bolt hole right there that held the power steering bracket on, and it was really hard to get to with the turbo in place, so we just took it out. You can also see this is the oil return line for the turbo. It was a nice AN line. It was completely melted as well, so not exactly mad that we took it off and kind of cut into it to verify, so that'll get replaced as well. This is the turbo itself. It has like a pretty well made like stainless log manifold. Sorry, I gotta adjust. That seems to be built pretty well. The turbo itself is a Garrett GT2560R. It's got a Turbo Smart IWG 75 wastegate. I have ordered a new diaphragm for this as well. I was concerned that maybe the whoops, the diaphragm might have gotten messed up, and in that case, basically, you know, you would have go to hit boost and it would have never stopped because it doesn't have vacuum. So I'm going to be rebuilding that. This thing does have, Donnie did put the Inconel, like stage 8 or whatever brand it was, fasteners on the turbo to manifold, because he was having some issues with those backing out. I don't know if I'm going to bother taking this joint apart and putting a new gasket in it and putting it back together. I may not. That's to be determined, but we'll definitely be rebuilding this. Obviously the compressor housing got super dirty when all the power steering fluid and stuff got all over it. This bracket for the wastegate also doesn't really tighten that well, so those compressor bolts will come out, and at the very least get like a washer thrown on them or something to kind of snug that up as it should be. I do kind of want to replace the manifold altogether just because of how it positions the turbo. You may be able to tell like from that angle, with the head being, you know, right here. It does put all of the housing and stuff really close to the head. So, you know, you can kind of just tell by the resting position of the downpipe, the turbo pretty much chills like right here. There's a gentleman on Facebook, on one of the Miata groups, that makes a manifold that kind of swings the position of the turbo kind of out here, which gives you a lot more space next to the head. The only reason I'm hesitant on doing that at the moment is because obviously I would have to modify the downpipe to fit, and I kind of just want to get it back up and going first just to shake it all down, and I could always just take the turbo back off and do that at a later date. As I mentioned before, we did have that brake fluid reservoir kind of get crispy too. We got a new one of those to go in. And then there was obviously just a bunch of fluid and shit all over this part of the car. So we got all that cleaned up and all dried up now. So yeah, I'm sure I'm missing some things, but I just kind of wanted to make a, hey, it's in the garage type video. We've got a whole gaggle of stuff to get. Just kind of, you know, a new drain hose. The fuel line is going to be used for like the smaller coolant lines and stuff. New couplers and T-bolt clamps, like I mentioned. Intake and exhaust manifold gaskets. The rear wing needs a couple bits of hardware. But you know, we got some things to get. To get this going back together. It really isn't as far as it might look, you know, to a layman in terms of how apart it is in terms of going back together. We did, with it pretty much in this state, hook a battery to it, and you know, we plugged in the Mega Squirt, and everything seems fine with that. Connected to it fine, pulled the tune off of it, you know, no issues there. No smoke in the chassis harness, windows worked, all that good stuff. So definitely have a good platform moving forward. I look forward to kind of, you know, making some more content on it going forward. There's definitely enough projects to keep us busy for a while. As things move forward, I'll be sure to keep you guys in the loop. And until next time, appreciate you guys watching.